You ever found yourself at a crossroads, feeling like everything's falling apart and you don't know where to turn? That's exactly where Ethan is at the start of this story. He's just been through a brutal breakup, his lease is up, and he's crashing on his best friend's couch, unsure of what comes next. But what happens when things take an unexpected turn? When the lines between friendship and something more blur in ways neither of them saw coming. In this video, we'll follow Ethan through a night that starts with confusion and exhaustion, but leads to a discovery that could change everything. What starts as a simple favor, staying at a friend's place for a few nights, quickly becomes something much deeper and more complicated. Tensions rise as Ethan meets his best friend's older brother, Liam. The connection is instant, but so is the discomfort. There's something about Liam that Ethan can't shake, a quiet intensity, a look that feels too heavy to ignore. But it's not until that night, lying awake in the darkness, that everything starts to shift. Ethan's restlessness isn't just emotional. It's the start of something new, something he doesn't know how to handle yet. In this video, we'll explore how a simple moment can change the course of everything. Stay with us as we dive into the complex emotions of relationships, the confusion of new beginnings, and the tension of discovering feelings you never expected. You won't want to miss how this story unfolds. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join us for more stories that tug at your heart and keep you on the edge of your seat. Welcome to our channel, we're so glad you're here. Ethan felt the weight of the silence in the house the next morning, heavier than he expected. He didn't want to be a burden, but here he was, sleeping on Noah's couch like it was his only option. The air felt different here, quieter than his apartment ever was. It felt too still. His mind was still racing, thoughts bouncing between his breakup and the unknown future ahead of him. He couldn't settle, couldn't rest. He barely noticed Liam at first. He wasn't used to him being around. Noah was the friend he'd always known, the one he'd gotten close to in high school, the one who had always been there. But Liam was different. He was Noah's older brother, someone Ethan had only crossed paths with in passing over the years. Quiet, reserved, and always carrying a certain heaviness. He hadn't paid much attention to him before, but now, Ethan found his gaze lingering a little longer whenever Liam walked by. That morning, when he made his coffee, Liam just happened to be in the kitchen, looking as serious as ever. The sound of the coffee machine was the only noise, filling the space between them with an odd tension. Ethan was never great at small talk, especially now, with his thoughts scattered and his emotions raw. But when Liam slid a mug toward him, their fingers brushed, just for a second. It was brief, but Ethan felt it, a spark of something he didn't know how to name. He looked up, meeting Liam's eyes for the first time that day. It was quick, but it left Ethan feeling off balance, like he was walking on a tightrope and wasn't sure how far he could go before falling. Liam didn't say anything. He just nodded as if nothing had happened, and Ethan tried to brush it off, telling himself it was just a casual touch. But something in Liam's gaze lingered. He didn't look away, his eyes sharp and thoughtful, almost as if he knew exactly what Ethan was feeling. Later that day, Ethan went into the living room to find a blanket neatly folded on the couch. It was Liam, again. He wasn't sure what to make of it, but the small gestures were starting to get to him. He wasn't used to this kind of attention. Not like this, not from someone who was so closed off, so hard to read. He wanted to thank Liam, but the words got caught in his throat. There was something about him, something he couldn't quite grasp, but it was enough to make his heart race just a little faster. Noah was out that night, leaving Ethan and Liam alone in the house for the first time. The tension between them was palpable, thick like smoke that couldn't be cleared. Liam was sitting across from him, looking almost distant but somehow present in a way Ethan couldn't ignore. The quiet stretched between them until Liam broke it, his voice low but steady. "You know," he started, "you don't have to pretend you're okay." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. The walls he'd built up, the ones he thought were so strong, started to feel fragile, like they could crumble at any moment. He wasn't okay, not at all. But admitting it out loud, especially to Liam, felt impossible. Instead, he shrugged, trying to play it off, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Liam saw right through him. That, for once, someone could see through all the masks he wore. Later, when they sat in the living room, the soft hum of music playing in the background, Ethan allowed himself to breathe. Just for a moment. He didn't have to pretend he had it all together. Not here, not with Liam. But when he caught Liam's eye again, something shifted. Ethan could feel it, something unspoken, something dangerous. That night, as Ethan lay back down on the couch, his mind wouldn't stop racing. He wasn't sure what he was feeling, what was happening, but he couldn't shake the thought that everything was about to change. He drifted off to sleep, his thoughts tangled, a soft whisper escaping his lips, "What am I even doing with my life?" Ethan woke up to a strange sensation, warmth. He didn't know how long he'd been asleep, but when his eyes opened, he realized he wasn't on the couch anymore. The softness of the bed beneath him was the first thing he noticed. The second thing was the feeling of arms wrapped around him, strong but gentle, holding him close. He froze for a moment, heart pounding in his chest. The realization hit him all at once: he was in Liam's bed. And Liam's arms were around him. For a second, Ethan's mind raced. Was this some sort of dream? He glanced around the room, trying to gather his bearings, but everything felt surreal, disorienting. His head ached, his chest tight with a mixture of confusion and anxiety. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be in this position, not after everything that had happened. But it didn't feel wrong. In fact, as his heart began to slow, he realized that he felt strangely safe. His gaze drifted over to Liam. The older man was asleep beside him, his breathing slow and steady. Liam's face was so much softer when he wasn't awake, less guarded, less intense. Ethan could see the faint lines of exhaustion beneath Liam's eyes, the signs of someone who carried more than their fair share of weight on their shoulders. And then the memories came rushing back. The night before, Ethan had woken up in the middle of the night, overwhelmed by the wave of emotions crashing over him. It was too much. Too much to carry alone, too much to bear. He had stumbled out of bed, feeling the cold sweat on his skin, the tightness in his chest, the ache of everything he was trying to escape. He had collapsed onto the floor, shaking, unable to control the panic that was gripping him. It was then that Liam found him. He didn't hesitate. He didn't ask questions. He just picked Ethan up, carried him to his own bed, and held him there, soothing him with nothing but the presence of his arms around him. Ethan didn't remember falling asleep in Liam's arms, but that's where he was now. For a long moment, Ethan stayed perfectly still, just breathing in the warmth of the moment, feeling the steady rise and fall of Liam's chest. He tried to ignore the swirl of conflicting emotions inside him. This was Liam, his best friend's older brother. They weren't supposed to have this kind of connection, were they? There were lines they didn't cross, rules that shouldn't be broken. But that wasn't the point. The point was that Ethan felt something for Liam, something deeper than he had ever felt before. Something more than just admiration or respect. It was something more complicated, more dangerous. And the more he tried to push it away, the more it seemed to pull him in. Liam shifted slightly in his sleep, and Ethan stiffened, suddenly aware of how close they were. He could feel the warmth of Liam's body against his own, and the sensation made his pulse race. He didn't want to move, didn't want to ruin this fragile moment. But he also didn't know what to do with the feelings that were swirling inside him. A few moments passed before Liam stirred, his hand brushing Ethan's arm as he stretched. The touch was so casual, so innocent, yet it sent a jolt of electricity through Ethan's body. Liam blinked sleepily and then looked at him, his expression still groggy but soft. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low and rough from sleep. Ethan didn't know how to answer. He wasn't okay, not really. But he couldn't say that. He didn't want to admit how much he needed this, how much he needed Liam. Instead, he gave a small nod, his throat tight. "Yeah, I'm fine." Liam didn't press. He simply nodded back, his eyes soft with understanding, and slowly began to pull his arms away. The sudden lack of contact left Ethan feeling cold, like he had lost something he didn't know he needed. But he quickly shook the feeling off. It was ridiculous to feel that way. This wasn't supposed to happen. Liam sat up on the edge of the bed, running a hand through his messy hair. Ethan watched him, still lying there, unsure of what to do next. He was aware of the growing tension between them, the space that wasn't really space at all. It felt too intimate, too raw, for it to be just nothing. Liam's voice broke the silence. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," he said quietly, his eyes not quite meeting Ethan's. I couldn't leave you like that last night. You looked like you were about to break. Ethan didn't know how to respond to that. Part of him wanted to tell Liam how grateful he was, how much it meant to him, but the other part of him wanted to run. Run from the feelings he couldn't control, run from the connection that was quickly becoming too much to ignore. I didn't know what to do, Liam continued, his voice strained. You were shaking so hard. I couldn't leave you there. Ethan sat up slowly, his mind spinning. The vulnerability in Liam's voice made his heart ache. For a brief moment, he wanted to reach out, to close the distance between them. But instead, he remained silent, the weight of everything hanging between them like an invisible wall. I'm sorry, Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. Liam turned to look at him then, his eyes sharp but soft, a quiet understanding in them. You don't have to apologize, he said, his tone firm but gentle. We all need someone sometimes. The words hit Ethan harder than he expected. It wasn't just that Liam was trying to comfort him, it was the way he said it, like he knew what it felt like to be broken, to need someone and not know where to turn. And for some reason, that made Ethan feel a little less alone. For a moment, they both just sat there, the quiet between them not uncomfortable but heavy. With something unsaid, Ethan didn't know what this was. He didn't know where it was going. But one thing was clear, he couldn't deny the pull he felt, the connection that had formed between them in such a short time. And as Liam stood up and walked toward the door, his voice quiet as he spoke over his shoulder, Ethan felt his heart race once again. You should rest some more. I'll be downstairs if you need me. Ethan didn't reply. He just watched Liam go, his heart still pounding, his mind still reeling from everything that had just happened. The day passed in a haze, and the more Ethan tried to focus, the more his mind drifted back to the feeling of Liam's arms around him. He tried to push it away, tried to force himself to focus on something else, but every time he closed his eyes, all he saw was Liam's quiet intensity, the way his eyes lingered just a little too long, the way his touch felt like it left a mark that Ethan couldn't wash away. Noah had been out most of the day, and Ethan found himself alone with his thoughts. The house felt empty, even though it wasn't. He kept replaying the moment he woke up in Liam's bed over and over in his mind. He should have felt uncomfortable. He should have felt awkward. But he didn't. He felt connected. He wasn't sure how or why, but it was there, this unspoken bond that neither of them had addressed but both seemed to understand. That evening, Noah returned home, and Ethan tried his best to act normal, to not let his inner turmoil show. But it wasn't easy. The air felt thicker now, like something was hanging between them, and Noah didn't seem to notice, or at least, he didn't acknowledge it. But Liam was different. He had this way of looking at Ethan, like he was always watching him, observing him, even when he was supposed to be doing something else. And it unsettled Ethan in a way he couldn't explain. Around dinner, Noah and Liam sat together, chatting casually, while Ethan picked at his food. It felt like the world was moving around him while he was stuck in this suspended moment, caught between something he didn't understand and something he was afraid to confront. He kept his eyes down, his focus on his plate, but every now and then, he'd glance up and catch Liam looking at him. Each time, his heart would skip a beat, and he'd quickly look away, as though he were caught doing something wrong. Ethan, Noah said, breaking him from his thoughts. You okay? You've barely touched your food. Ethan gave a small smile, trying to appear fine. Yeah, I'm just not really hungry. Liam didn't say anything, but his gaze flickered toward Ethan, his eyes narrowing slightly. There was something almost protective in the way he looked at him, something that sent a wave of warmth through Ethan's chest, even though it confused him more than ever. After dinner, Noah excused himself to take a call, and Ethan found himself alone in the living room with Liam once again. The tension was thick, but neither of them spoke for the longest time. It wasn't an awkward silence, not exactly. It was more like a quiet understanding that neither of them could name. Finally, Liam spoke, his voice quiet but firm. We need to talk, Ethan. The words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. Talk. About what? He tried to swallow the lump in his throat, his palms suddenly sweaty. About what? Liam hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. He stood up and walked over to the window, his back to Ethan for a moment. When he turned, his face was more serious than usual. About last night. About how you're acting. About everything. Ethan's heart raced, and he found it hard to breathe. What was Liam going to say? Was he going to tell him this was all a mistake? That Ethan shouldn't have been there, shouldn't have felt what he felt. That it was just some weird, temporary moment of weakness that didn't mean anything. I know you're going through a lot, Liam continued, his voice softer now, but still steady. I know it's not easy right now, with everything that happened. But I can't ignore what's been happening between us. The way you look at me, the way I look at you. He stopped for a second, his expression unreadable. We can't pretend like nothing's happening. Ethan's chest tightened, and the words caught in his throat. He wanted to say something, to argue that it was just a moment, that it didn't mean anything, but the truth was, he wasn't sure it didn't. He wasn't sure what any of it meant. I don't want to make things worse, Liam said quietly, stepping closer. But I can't keep pretending, either. I know you're not okay. I know you're struggling, and if you need me, I'm here. But I need you to be honest with me. About what you're feeling. Ethan looked away, unsure of what to say. He had spent so much of his life hiding his emotions, pretending everything was fine, even when it wasn't. But here, with Liam, everything felt different. The truth was right there, in the air between them, and he couldn't escape it. I don't know what I'm feeling, Ethan admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what's happening, but I can't stop thinking about it. About you. Liam's eyes softened, and for the first time, Ethan saw something in them, a vulnerability, a quiet understanding that made his heart ache. Liam didn't say anything right away. He just stood there, watching him with those intense eyes, and in that moment, Ethan felt like he was standing on the edge of something he couldn't control. Finally, Liam spoke, his voice low and steady. You don't have to figure it all out right now. But we can't keep pretending like this doesn't matter. Ethan's breath caught in his throat, and he nodded slowly, the weight of the moment sinking in. It didn't matter what happened next. They had crossed a line, and neither of them could pretend they hadn't. For the first time in days, Ethan felt a small weight lift off his shoulders. There was no going back, and maybe that was okay. Maybe it was time to stop pretending. The next few days passed in a blur, each moment stretching longer than the last as Ethan struggled to make sense of what was happening. His thoughts were consumed by Liam, by the quiet intensity that seemed to follow them wherever they went. Everything felt charged, like the air was electric and any touch or glance could spark something neither of them was ready to handle. The mornings were the hardest. Ethan woke up every day, his heart racing, his mind immediately flashing to the events of the night before. His interactions with Liam had become more intense, more intimate in a way that left Ethan feeling both exhilarated and terrified. He could feel the tension building between them, a silent understanding that neither of them dared to speak aloud. Liam had started leaving small things for him around the house, a cup of coffee waiting for him in the kitchen when he woke up, a book he thought Ethan might like, a fresh towel after a shower. It was nothing overt, nothing that would immediately draw attention, but to Ethan, it was everything. Each gesture felt like a message, one he wasn't sure how to interpret. Were they just being kind? Or was there something more beneath the surface? One evening, Noah was out with friends again, and the house was once again quiet, just the two of them. Liam had been distant that day, withdrawn in a way that left Ethan feeling more anxious than usual. The space between them had grown, and Ethan wasn't sure why. It wasn't like Liam to pull away, not after everything they'd talked about. Ethan found himself sitting in the living room, the low hum of the television filling the silence. His thoughts kept drifting back to the conversation they'd had, how Liam had been so open, so honest, about what was happening between them. Ethan had tried to push those thoughts away, to pretend he could go back to being the person who kept his emotions locked up tight, but it wasn't working. Every time Liam looked at him, every time their fingers brushed or their eyes met, Ethan felt something shift inside him. Something he couldn't ignore. Finally, Ethan couldn't take it anymore. He stood up, pacing the room, his mind racing. He needed to talk to Liam. He needed to know what was going on, needed to understand why everything felt so confusing, so overwhelming. He couldn't keep pretending he wasn't affected by what had happened. When he found Liam, he was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, staring out the window with a pensive look on his face. The moment Ethan stepped into the room, Liam's eyes flickered to him, and the tension between them spiked. It was as if everything they had been avoiding, all the words they hadn't said, was suddenly hanging in the air. I need to talk to you, Ethan said, his voice shaky despite his best efforts to sound calm. Liam didn't reply at first. He just looked at Ethan, his expression unreadable. Then, with a sigh, he pushed himself off the counter and turned to face him fully. About what? Ethan took a step forward, his heart hammering in his chest. About us, he said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. I don't understand what's happening. I don't know what this is, or what it means, but I can't keep pretending like nothing's different between us. Can't keep ignoring the way I feel every time you look at me, or the way my heart races when we're in the same room. I need to know what this is, because I can't keep living like this, Liam. Liam's eyes softened, his gaze dropping for a moment before he looked back up at Ethan. For a long moment, there was silence, a heavy pause that seemed to stretch on forever. Ethan could feel the weight of the unspoken words hanging between them, each of them scared to take the next step. I don't know what this is either, Liam finally said, his voice low, almost vulnerable. But I can't pretend it doesn't matter. I can't ignore the way I feel, either. I don't know what this is, Ethan, but I don't want to walk away from it without figuring it out. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't expected that. He hadn't expected Liam to admit that, to voice the exact same fears that Ethan had been holding inside. There was no going back now. The tension between them had been building for too long, and now it was too much to ignore. You mean you're okay with this? Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Okay with what's happening between us? Liam nodded slowly, taking a step closer to Ethan. I don't know if okay is the right word. But I can't deny it. And I don't want to. I think we need to see where this goes. Together. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, his hands trembling slightly as he looked at Liam. He was so close now, so close that Ethan could feel the heat radiating off him, could almost hear the beating of his heart. There was something in Liam's eyes, something real, and Ethan couldn't pull away from it. He didn't want to. For a moment, neither of them moved. The world seemed to stop, the only sound the quiet thrum of their heartbeats in the stillness of the kitchen. And then, without another word, Liam reached out and touched Ethan's arm, his fingers brushing softly against his skin. It wasn't a forceful touch, but it was enough to send a rush of warmth through Ethan's body. He looked up into Liam's eyes, finding a quiet sincerity there, and for the first time in days, he felt like everything might be okay. He wasn't alone in this, and maybe, just maybe, neither was Liam. I don't want to mess this up, Ethan admitted, his voice trembling. But I don't know what I'm doing. Liam smiled, a small but genuine smile that made Ethan's chest tighten. Neither do I. But we'll figure it out. And with that, everything shifted. The tension that had been hanging in the air dissolved, replaced by something new, something that felt uncertain but real. There were no guarantees, no promises, but for the first time in a long time, Ethan didn't feel like he was facing the unknown alone. They were in this together, whatever this was. As Liam took a step back, his hand falling from Ethan's arm, the space between them seemed to shrink. The world didn't feel as overwhelming anymore. Maybe, just maybe, they were about to start something neither of them had expected, but both were ready to explore. The days after that conversation with Liam felt like a slow unraveling of everything Ethan had known. It was as if the world around him had shifted on its axis, leaving him with this strange sense of anticipation that he couldn't shake. Every moment with Liam felt charged, but it wasn't just the intensity of their interactions anymore. It was something more, something deeper that Ethan couldn't quite name but knew he couldn't ignore. Liam had become more present in his life. They found themselves spending more time together, casual hangouts that felt surprisingly easy, moments of silence that weren't uncomfortable but comforting. Liam's presence, which had once been so intimidating and distant, now felt like something he could rely on, something that pulled Ethan in and made him want to stay. Noah was around too, of course, but the dynamic between the three of them had changed. Noah was oblivious to the quiet shifts happening between Ethan and Liam. He never seemed to notice the way their interactions had become laced with a new tension, a tension that Ethan couldn't hide even if he wanted to. And honestly, there was no part of him that wanted to. He didn't want to deny what he was feeling anymore. But it was the little things that began to add up, the way Liam would always be near, even when he didn't need to be. When they'd watch TV, Liam would find excuses to sit next to Ethan, their legs brushing, the air between them suddenly thick with something unspoken. And when they'd talk, there was always this new closeness to their words, a vulnerability in the way they looked at each other, as if they were trying to see each other's souls. The night Noah went out again, Ethan felt that familiar tension rising in his chest. Liam had been quiet all day, lost in his thoughts, but when Noah left, there was this instant shift. Ethan was alone with him once more, and he could feel the pull between them growing stronger. They sat in the living room, the lights dim, the hum of the street outside the only sound. It was strange how calm everything felt, how easy it was to simply be near Liam without the weight of the world on his shoulders. The unease from earlier days had faded, replaced by a growing sense of acceptance, like they both knew they were stepping into something they couldn't back away from. Liam glanced over at Ethan, his eyes a little darker than usual, and for a moment, Ethan couldn't breathe. He could see the same questions mirrored in Liam's gaze, the same uncertainty, the same longing. "Are you sure about this?" Liam asked, his voice quiet but steady. Ethan swallowed, unsure of how to respond. He had spent so much time questioning everything, wondering what it all meant, if it was right or wrong, if they were doing the right thing. But in this moment, with Liam looking at him like that, Ethan couldn't imagine walking away. "I'm not sure about anything," Ethan admitted, his voice raw. "But I know I can't ignore how I feel anymore. I can't pretend I'm okay with just being friends. Not when it's so much more than that. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I can't deny that this feels real." Liam's expression softened, and for the first time, there was no hesitation in his eyes. No walls. Just raw honesty. "I don't know what's going to happen either. But I know I don't want to lose this." The words hit Ethan harder than he expected. There was no hiding behind half-truths, no pretending they weren't on the edge of something bigger than either of them could control. It was terrifying, but for the first time in a long time, it also felt right. Liam took a slow step forward, his hand reaching out to touch Ethan's. The contact sent a jolt through him, something both electrifying and grounding. It wasn't just a simple touch. It was the beginning of something they were both ready to face, together. The moment stretched on, both of them standing there, hand in hand, unsure of the next step, but unwilling to take a step back. Liam's thumb brushed over the back of Ethan's hand, the simple gesture speaking volumes about everything that had been left unsaid. And in that quiet space, with only the two of them, the world outside seemed to disappear. It was just them, two people who had been circling each other for weeks, unsure but needing something more. "You're not alone, Ethan," Liam said, his voice barely above a whisper. Not anymore. Ethan felt the weight of those words settle in his chest, the truth of them sinking deep. He wasn't alone. Not anymore. They were in this together. Whatever this was. And for the first time since everything had started, Ethan felt a sense of peace. Not because he had all the answers, not because he knew where this was headed, but because he wasn't carrying it alone anymore. Liam was there, standing beside him, offering him something real. And maybe that was all they needed. Slowly, almost without thinking, Ethan closed the distance between them. Their lips met in a kiss. Soft at first, tentative, like they were both testing the waters, unsure if it was right. But as the seconds stretched on, the kiss deepened, and the doubts that had lingered in Ethan's mind began to fade. There was nothing to figure out right now. There was only this moment. This kiss. When they pulled away, neither of them said anything. Words weren't necessary anymore. They both knew what they had. They both knew that whatever happened next, they would face it together. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt a weight lift off his chest. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that, with Liam beside him, he was ready to face whatever came next. As the days went by, Ethan and Liam continued to navigate this new chapter in their lives, taking it one step at a time. There were no guarantees, no promises about what the future held. But they were no longer afraid of what might come. Together, they had found something real, something they both needed, something that had quietly grown between them and couldn't be ignored. With each passing day, the connection between them deepened, and the world didn't feel quite as uncertain anymore. Life would still throw challenges their way, but they had learned that, sometimes, the best thing to do is to face the unknown together. In the end, it wasn't about having all the answers. It was about knowing that, no matter what, they wouldn't have to face it alone. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories, compelling characters, and unforgettable moments. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more content that touches the heart. Leave a comment and share your thoughts, we'd love to hear what you think. Until next time, take care, and remember, sometimes, the best things in life are the ones you never see coming.